right, so this first hand with Villain, I guess that's what I call him. I saw him earlier. I don't have any direct history with him, but I saw him bluff shove pocket threes on a Jack 2-9 deuce board, and the flop was monotone, and he has a 3 of diamonds. That's the only thing I've seen from him at this point.
Okay.
So I'll move it here. Obviously, it's not great. We're going 4 ways to the flop.
Yeah.
But I'll go ahead and see bet since I got the prepare. Just let me know you can pause it at any point, I guess.
Yeah. So like, what do you So when this flop comes down, like, what's like your first like initial thoughts and stuff?
Well, I mean, it seems like a decent enough flop, but the concern is obviously is that it's there's a lot of draws that can hit on the turn. So I'm definitely not looking to check here. I don't know anything about my opponent, so I don't know if it's possible I could check raise the flop. So I wanted to lead out and try to really thin it down and really get a heads up onto the turn.
Yeah. I think that
a lot of really.
I think like you should also like consider like exploitatively betting bigger on the flop. I know you chose like a pretty standard size. Like, but I think that this is like one of those boards that you could definitely consider having a check raise strategy here. However, like if we don't necessarily know villains are going to bet at a high enough frequency, then we don't have to do that. But if you do choose to bet, I think this is one of these boards that you're gonna get peeled on by like 10x's, queen jacks, but obviously we block that, and then. But I think that you could just bet bigger. Like you could just go 275 here pretty easily and just print money. Also, it's one of those textures that like it's gonna be like most of the value you're going to get will be on the flop because turns and rivers will likely slow down action, especially with your specific hand. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right.
Yeah, because I guess like we're talking about the cards that can kill the action, both for I guess my willingness to bet and maybe even my opponent, depending on what he has.
Yeah, it's just one of those like on a turn 8, turn 7, turn queen, any of those cards like you're likely gonna check call. Turn king, like turn 10. It's like there's like not many cards that you're not going like you're gonna feel pretty good about. So that for that reason, like most of your value will just come on the flop. But all right, cool. Betting is obviously fine.
Yeah. So this the one opponent who called here on the flop was the one I was telling you about with the threes. Like he bluff shoved, I guess, on an earlier hand against a different guy. So my plan basically was for the turn. One of two things: either if it was one of those scary cards that came out, then I would plan on check calling and just trying to keep just basically a pot control sort of deal. Versus if a playing card comes out because of what I saw this guy do earlier, I was going to go for a check raise.
On the turn?
It comes out with go ahead.
You're planning to check raise this turn?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Brick, I mean. Yeah, I know like he might have a couple of sets here. He might show up with 10-9 or something like that. But so with this guy, I haven't seen what he had done earlier. I know there's also like a lot of draws in his range. Yeah, I wanted to give him a shot to take a stab at it.
Would you do this with like?
Risky, I guess, if he could check behind.
I mean that's fine. I think that's really good. I think that you could also do this with some of like your diamond draws. So say like for example you had like ace jack of diamonds on the flop. You could potentially check call that hand because if you check and this person bets flop and it folds around, you're probably still ahead of his range. And you have enough backdoor equity to continue. When the turn comes the deuce of diamonds, like you could definitely check raise bluff turn. Because he'll still have enough bluffs in his range. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So just keeping pure balance between hands that, like I said, still have some backdoor equity versus like hands that I have like right now, like an overpair.
Yeah, for sure. You could definitely check raise like ace jack of diamonds, and stuff like that. And to balance, like you could definitely have some overpairs in your range too. But we would check raise those on flop. But I mean, it's still fine. Yeah, I think check raising here is really good.
So thoughts on sizing there?
I think like it's so if he calls this is 24 plus 7, then you just smash. Yeah, I mean it's definitely like okay. It's just like doesn't look like you're ever folding. Which like makes me want to go like a little smaller or yeah. I think I would go like a little smaller for reasons of like him thinking that you can like he could rebluff or whatever. Um because it's like weird. Like he'll never I don't think he'll shove worse here that often. Because it just doesn't look like you're ever folding. So maybe we could take like $2 off, like maybe just make it $10. And maybe that makes a difference. Maybe it doesn't, But I think anything.
Yeah, 'cause I guess we still got like left behind, I guess.
Well, no, we're gonna have half pot on the river if he calls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Okay, yeah, I wasn't taking into account his call. Yeah.
Yeah, like if he calls, we have half pot on the river, which is like never, ever, ever folding. No matter what river card comes. So I think it's fine. Like I think I would have just taken a little bit off, just for like deception reasons. That's all. But yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so we made he jams.
Yeah, it's a snap call.
I saw him basically make this exact same play earlier with the pocket threes on a jack deuce, 9-deuce board. I know sometimes he's going to turn up with, pocket nines, pocket tens, 10-9, pocket fours, but
yeah,
I don't think that any overpairs in his range. Just he didn't three-bet pre-flop, and with his steps being fairly aggressive so far, I think he, with three-bet queens plus.
Yeah.
So I think his range here, I feel like it should have a decent amount of draws in it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it kind of sucks that you have jacks because I think it sucks that you have jacks and the jack of spades in your hand. Just because like you're blocking a lot of his draws now. Like you're blocking all his big draws that contain the jack of spades, and you're blocking queen jack and king jack. That kind of sucks. But I think like a player that's running 37-23 is still gonna have like a lot of hands. I expect like ace 5 of diamonds to show up here. Yeah, I mean it just looks like you have some bluffs here too, right? Like, which is like why I would have sized it a little smaller because like you want to give him as much rope to reshove, like So for that reason, I would have sized it a little smaller. But I think like this is like an automatic snap call. Like he's just gonna have too many hands that are just either bluffing or have like ace 10. Like ace 10 of diamonds is like just gonna rip through. So yeah, I think this is just like a pretty easy call.
Yeah. I agree. I didn't give much thought to snapping off here.
Yeah.
Not against this particular.
That's a really good river. We should win now, like always. Oh, why didn't you just put it in on the turn?
No, I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why the replay's on that. That's weird.
Oh, okay. No, it's because he had you covered. He had you covered. Yeah. I get it. Okay, yeah, I think you played that well. Like, I think you played that really well. Yeah. That's fine. Like I expect him to show up with like a lot of diamonds. Yeah, that was good.
Alright, so sorry, I'm taking some notes here.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Alright, so this next hand, like I don't know, it was kind of a weird hand. I won it, but it was a weird hand. And I think I could get myself in trouble in spots like this.
So just so like you're playing 25-0 on like on America's Card Room and stuff?
Yes. finished third a couple weeks back in this big tournament on here, a 40K guarantee tournament.
Sweet.
And so I've got like a little over 5K bankroll.
Nice.
But see, I was grinding 10 NL before that, so I didn't want to jump, all the way up to like 50 or 100 NL.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, that's good.
I wanted to make sure I could compete in the States. I'm sorry, do what?
No, it's very good. It's good that you could just jump up one level and, see if you could win.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I could, compete with these guys, and then I wasn't going to get ran over before I, take a stab at 50 and so on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Even though I got the bankroll for it.
Yeah, I agree. That's good. That's really good.
So, all right, so we're some in the big blind. Got a tight passive player that raises, and what do you think about the defend here? First off, I thought it might be a bit too loose of a defend after going back and looking at it.
I think it's a completely standard defend. I would never fold this hand to 3x. No. Okay. Yeah, no way.
Okay, so.
Yeah, pretty standard check call. Can you move his stats a little bit? Because I can't see his bet sizes.
All right, let me move this.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
All right, I'll go back. So
I think he just bets like 3/4
he bets
pot.
just under 2.
Yeah, it's just a call, like pretty easy call.
Yeah, this is where I kind of mixed it up a little bit, and I'm not sure if my reasoning is sound for doing this. That's why I wanted to kind of make sure. With him being tight passive, I didn't think that this churn card was really going to do anything for him. And my concern is that I don't feel like this hand is that great to go to showdown with.
Why not?
Just in general.
Why not?
So,
why not though?
I decided to go.
Wait, go back. Go. I want to go back to your thought process. Why do you feel like this hand's not good enough to go to showdown?
Just because of the player that I'm up against. Somebody who's only raising 11% of hands, and he's barreled twice at this point.
Yeah.
And I feel like essentially I guess I turn my hand into a bluff in this spot. That's why I was saying I didn't know that my reasoning was sound on what I did on this hand.
But you don't really rep that many hands though, on the turn. You rep sets of 5, sets of deuces, and 5/8 suited.
Weakest queen.
Yeah, but he's gonna play pretty perfectly against those though, right? If you check raise turn with Queen X, what I'm saying is you don't really rep that many value hands, so he's able to kind of deduce your range to some bluffs. Queen X that's overvaluing, and very very rare huge value hands sets, and then the two combos of 5/8 suited. Yeah, I think you should just call. I think you should just. I think you should just call. And fold to river action often. Because you don't rep enough value check raising the turn, but you still beat some of his Ace-3 of spades, Ace-4 of spades, Ace-King, Ace-Jack, Ace-10 of spades. You still beat 6-7 of spades, Jack-10 of spades, all of which I presume he'll barrel like this. Even if he's tight, he'll still bet, So I still think you beat some of his bluffs, which I think you should just call and then just check fold rivers. I think that's fair. I just don't think you rep enough value.
Then you're really going to play this game.
Yeah, I'm curious, that's for sure.
Based off of what you just described, his hand plays out really badly. But anyway, all right, so I check raise him here. With this guy, if he comes over the top, even for that little bit of amount, I feel like I would just need to fold. Even with top pair there. If he comes back over the top of my hand here,
but you see, this is where this is where you could get lost, right? Because Like there'll be good players that would just shove ace king of spades here because you rep so narrow. You know what I mean? Like you rep such a narrow range of hands that you're likely bluffing here, or like you're overvaluing queen x. And now if you're check raise folding queen x against somebody that's good, like you're just gonna get torched, right? Like obviously we understand this guy's not good, but if he rips through here, you're getting a really good price to call, right? Like, so it's like we're really digging ourselves a hole here, check raising and then folding it, because if he ever just like decides to put it in with worse, not believing us, and we fold, it's a huge mistake. You know what I mean? So I don't like it, but let's see what happens.
Yeah. When I made this play, I honestly felt like there were, a decent amount of times where I'm probably not going to have the best hand, and I knew I was turning my hand into a bluff. But like you said, there's really not much I could rep here, which is why my reasoning just really wasn't sound.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets interesting because like he flats, and then another spade comes, and I just went ahead and put pressure on him, and he folds. I don't know what he calls the churn with there though. It's like when I raise him on the churn, I don't really know what the river changes for him.
I mean, I think you just got like really lucky.
He's just really scared to hit that flush.
No, I think you probably just had the best hand. Like he probably just had jacks, or tens that
like nines through jacks maybe or something.
Yeah, like he probably had one of those hands like nines through jacks that just simply didn't believe you because you're repping such a narrow range on the turn, that he just calls. And then when the river comes with spade, he just presumes that like some of your semi bluffs are turned spades, maybe like 5-6 of spades or something, or like deuce x of spades. So when the spade falls, he like just folds it. He probably would have folded to like any aggression on the river. But again, like I think if he has like aces, like he just whatever shrug calls, because it's only half pot. Yeah, I think your play is like pretty poor on in this hand. But I think you just like confused yourself.
No, I agree.
I think you just like confused yourself because like he's tight and you're in the middle of like kind of the middle of your range, and you're trying to decide if it's good enough to check call turn or if you should just like turn your hand into a bluff. I think that this is a situation where you beat a fair amount of his hands on the turn, and you also don't have to turn your hand into a bluff because it's extremely difficult to, because you just don't rep. There's like not enough combos for you to rep that you can turn your hand into a bluff. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think honestly, because when the hand was actually playing itself out, like I thought that maybe he had something like Queen Jack or something like that to get him to fold, which is
but you'll never do that.
Range to get somebody to fold.
You're never getting him to fold
and like
top pair or better, I think, because it's just.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like after the fact, I think that was just one of those moments where, I do that obviously as a pretty inexperienced player as far as from a strategic point of view. Like I had those moments that I got to get myself out of where I convince myself of something when it really doesn't make sense overall in the grand scheme of things.
Right. I give you credit for like thinking outside the box. You know what I mean? Like not many people would think about turning top pair into a bluff. You know what I mean? So that's kudos to that. You know what I mean? Like that's something that is going to benefit you down the road, because there are situations where top pair is no good and you could possibly turn it into a bluff. So that's definitely a good starting point. Even if it's not right in this hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just my thinking during the hand was that, and then I was thinking, this run out isn't good for a tight passive player, so that's why I was really trying to apply aggression. But
why? But it is
like ace queen here. I think he snapped me off the way.
But it is a good run out for. It's queen 5 deuce rainbow turn 8. Like this is not like a bad run out. This is a really good hand. Like he's gonna have many, many, many stronger hands than you on this run out. Like you just don't have that many 2-pair combos. There's no straights possible. He has like infinitely more ace queen plus than you. Like, so it's a good run out for him. You don't have that many good hands on this run out.
You think a better board? You think a better board for the situation I'm describing might be something like, I don't know, like Jack 9-7 or something like that. Like,
right? Yeah.
Something that's a little bit more connected on the.
Right. Okay. And I would just like.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just like also consider just like check smashing through the turn, like, because it's when you do this like small check raise and you leave yourself with half pot on the river, it's like not good because you shouldn't be able to get this bluff through on the river ever because you're laying such a good price. You know what I mean? You have to try to keep in mind like the sizes.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like you have to keep in mind the sizes you choose. Like maybe it's just better to just check raise all in on the turn if you're trying to rep a bluff, especially if it's a situation where you're only check raising for pot. You know what I mean? Or like even a little bit over pot.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you just check raise small and he calls, now you have half pot on the river and you're sitting there with a bluff. Like that's really bad. You know?
Oh, absolutely. Do you think that there's a possibility even with him with that spade coming on the turn that if we make that move to check raise all in that he might see it for a draw and maybe more willing to snap off with a hand like Jacks?
Yeah, for sure. If you would have check smashed the turn, not that I think it's good, I think you probably get called by Jacks. Like, at least some percentage of the time. But again, I still think check calling turn is like pretty good. So that's what I think.
All right, on to the next one.
Cool.
Okay, so this hand, like, I've got an idea of, if I'm going to commit, this was another one of those plays that are going to have you scratching your head.
All right.
I think that with it being such a low SPR on the flop, it's like an SPR of 3, I think I remember, that if I'm going to commit with this hand, if I'm convinced that this guy is stealing, that I should just go ahead and jam flop.
Yeah.
That's my revised thinking, but you'll see how it plays out.
Okay.
So fold around me, I raise on the button. Tight guy calls from small blind, and then this guy bumps it up here. I have no history with this guy. Obviously, I mean, he only played 19 hands at this point, but I mean, obviously, it looks like a clear steal situation. I didn't feel that great about like not having any history on this guy and then trying to 4-bet him.
Yeah.
With ace queen off.
Okay.
So I just decided to go ahead and call.
What kind of hands are you 4-betting?
And
what kind of hands are you looking to 4-bet?
With no history on villain.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be purely value hands. Jacks plus ace king.
He's running.
Really.
It's probably fine.
Like I do have some 4-bet bluffs that I do. But a lot of times it's very history. Like I feel like I gotta have some history on some guys. Like I rarely ever try to 4-bet bluff somebody that I don't know anything about.
How about like tens? Man, there's something special. I'll tell you one thing. Let me tell you one thing. Like in all like my years, like I've coached people for like 2 years now. That pause is what I live for. That like, how about like tens and then just silence? Like that's great. Just the silence of like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I think you're fine in just calling here. I think that I would construct a range of 4-betting that would include some bluffs that will be like ace X suited.
Yeah, I know
mostly.
You're not a fan of books and all that, but
yeah.
I've kind of taken that Ed Miller book approach with the ace 4, ace 5 suited.
I think it's fine here, though.
Yeah, it makes sense in bluffing.
Yeah. I think no. Like, I think it's fine here. I think that four betting those kind of hands here is definitely good. I think that I would flat this hand, in position for sure. I think you should be like consider.
Yeah, I was thinking now that I got position. I don't know why. I mean, is that even a fair statement to make? Having no history on villain, that we assume that this is just a standard skill spot for him. I mean, obviously with me raising the button and then a tight player flatting that he's not going to be afraid of a tight player flatting like that. I think he thinks that tight player is going to three bet if he has anything with three betting.
Well, kind of, because he's incentivized. He's incentivized to call here more than he's incentivized to three bet, because given the price he's getting, the majority of his range is incentivized to just call. So theoretically, he should be having a polarized range here, which is why you should just call with ace queen, because he's pulled. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Given the price he's being laid, he should just call with the majority of his range.
All right, so kind of a meh flop, but like I said, at this point, like it's an SPR of 3.
Yeah.
And I know that kind of puts you in that range where you should be committed. So I feel like on this flop, honestly, I'd either need to rip it or just let it go.
No way.
That's my revised here.
No, I think that's really bad. I don't think you should think like that. Like, if he bets $5, which is like probably not going to be the case, you should still just call. You have to. All right, we have to go back to the beginning. The beginning is he should have a polarized range here, right? Because if he has a hand like 9-7 suited, right, he's incentivized to call rather than three bet. Now, in the new age thinking, right, like if you watch like Sauce's videos on Run It Once and stuff like that, he's three betting hands like 9-8 suited, 9-8-7 suited, 9-10 suited from the big blind versus a button open, right? So in that formation, the best players are three betting suited connectors at some frequency. Now you're playing 25 and out. Like, I don't think these guys are like thinking, balancing their three bet range like that. I personally think he's probably three betting like really good hands, and then probably too many bluffs, right? So because of that, I don't necessarily think you need to rip for protection, right? There's like no card on the turn that's going to change the texture in such a way that is not going to allow you to continue sometimes or whatever. The worst card on the turn is literally a jack, right? But spades are not really too much of a concern. Things like that. I don't think you should just rip. I think that's like your hand is too good for that. Like if you had like ace jack of spades, maybe jack 10 of spades, maybe, big spade draws like ace x of spades of some kind. But I think that I would just always just call versus a bet. I think his bluff frequency.
Does it make sense? Like if. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, does it fall into one of situations like where if we did rip it on the flop here, that he's really only calling with hands that were probably to flip, like a jack 10 suited, jack 10 of spades. Or obviously sets ace king hands that have us crushed pretty much.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like he's probably bluffing here, and when you rip through, he's never calling with worse. But you also don't need to protect your hand. Like there's no need for protection, as well as he's never calling with worse. So when those two things are in play, where protection is not needed and he's not calling with worse, then we should just call.
Just keeping those bluffs in his range.
Yeah, as well as we don't need to protect our hand. Like our hand is Like the board's not gonna change like in such a way often enough for us to like really be concerned. Make sense?
All right, so he bets a little over half pot,
Yeah.
and I did just call.
Okay.
Now this is where, like, I mean, I don't think that what you're getting ready to see, like, I don't think that there's probably any amount of math or argument for my sake that would justify the upcoming play. Honestly, it was one of those things where, like, I really just went on gut feelings. Like,
good. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good, man.
If that, it's like, his like, okay. So let me go here. All right, so he makes this bet, and
that's really scary.
I already had it, yeah, I had it in my mind that, there was already a very strong chance that it was a squeeze play at the start.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he bets this big and leaves just a little bit behind, it looks bluffy to me. Like, it looks like, I'm like, what is, if he has
to you it looks bluffy. To me it looks so strong. I don't know. To me it looks so strong. I don't know why to you it looks bluffy. I'm scared.
Yeah, it looked at, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that I could argue anything that probably makes sense in the end. It was just one of those gut feelings where I'm like, I don't believe that he has it.
All right. Well, let's just look at your range as a whole, right? Let's take your range as a whole in terms of like what hands are you legitimately getting to this turn with, right? Like when you defend the 3-bet from in this formation, you're probably defending like King Jack suited, King Queen suited, maybe King 10 suited, right? Would be like your worst king. King 10 suited plus will defend Queen Jack suited plus. Will defend pairs and stuff like that, right? So when this flop comes out, you're gonna defend probably. Your worst defend will probably be 7-8 suited, which will fold a turn. You'll defend Ace 10 of clubs, Ace Jack of clubs, which will fold the turn. You'll defend all King X's, which you're probably just going to take to the felt. And then you'll defend Queen X's. So this is like, if you only defend King X on the turn, you're probably okay. King X and then all like some flush draws like Queen, because some of your flushes on the turn will contain Queen X, right? So like Ace Queen of Spades will just call flop. Queen Jack of Spades, Queen Jack of Spades, Queen 10 of Spades. King Queen will obviously go to the felt. I think if you think
when he bets this big, I'm thinking either have to fold or just wait in the bid. I mean, there's no calling.
Oh well, yeah, for sure. I think it depends how often you like. If you think he's getting way out of line with his frequencies, then you could definitely continue here. However, I think if you think he's getting way out of line with his frequencies, like this is an automatic 4-bet. You know what I mean? Pre-flop.
Yeah.
Like, because you're changing your train of thought. Go ahead, you could let it play out. Go ahead. You're changing your train of thought in such a way where like you're saying he's getting way out of line, right, with his frequencies. Wow. Okay, that's terrible with him. All right. So I think there's two discussions here. Right, but even if he just has like one spade in his hand, he should just call. Like, it's insane. Like his bluff is insane. So yeah, I mean he was just drawing dead. I think if you think he's getting way out of line with his frequencies like this, you need to just 4-bet, like a lot. You need to just like widen out your 4-bet range. For value.
And that is definitely an area of my game that I've really not explored enough.
Yeah, I think that. So it's like this, right? Like, if you need to just like forget about like these polled versus deep hold versus merge ranges. They're just titles, right? If you want to, if you could 3-bet a polarized range that just has a wider top. You know, does that make sense? That sounds as if it's a deep hold range, but it's not.
Yeah.
Like if you just 4-bet 3-bet or 4-bet a depolarized range that includes a wider top, that's like king queen suited, ace queen off plus, tens plus, then you're just printing value, right? And in low stakes games where these guys are probably not constructing 3-bet and then defend frequency or anything like that, you're just gonna print money.
Yeah, they're probably just going with it on the fly, whatever they feel like at that point in time, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So I think this is like a really good example of like you just changing your thought process midway through the hand. Like, because you thought he was like way out of line and you put it in on the turn, which you were correct. However, if he's like so out of line like this, you should just be 4-betting, like for value. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Cool. I think this is really interesting. I mean, he's like obviously pretty bad. Like, I was pretty scared on the turn because his sizing looked like interesting, I guess. I don't know. I mean, that was weird. But I definitely encourage you to like 4-bet more often though, because it looks like these guys are getting way out of line.
I do need to. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, it just looks like it just looks like he's getting way out of line. Like that's really what it looks like. So yeah, cool.
And okay, so if we 4-bet there, I mean, do you feel like we're getting the odds to call if he 5-bet shoves? I mean,
so you would 4-bet. You would 4-bet to.
That's kind of part of my like issue, I guess. I'm not, and I know I need to 4-bet more. I need to explore 4-betting a lot more than I have.
Yeah.
But I guess my concern is like is convincing myself to let it go. You know, if I get 5-bet jammed.
It really just depends on like what kind of frequency he's like really getting out of line with. So if he's 3-betting such a range that he needs to now over defend it, right? Then it's an easy call, right? Because if he's 3-betting like such a ridiculous amount of hands, right? Then he's probably gonna 5-bet bluff sometimes, right? And then you just snap off. But if he's not, then we'll need to just call more. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like the more hands that he 3-bets, the more hands he needs to defend those 3-bets with. So that means his bluff frequency or the hands he just calls with versus your 4-bet are going to be much larger because he just has such a large amount of 3-bets. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does? Okay, good. So yeah, just to recap, like if he's 3-betting such like a really large amount of hands, he needs to defend a certain amount of those hands versus your 4-bet, or else you're just printing money, right? So he's going to defend those by either calling or 5-betting, right? Now, against the call, you're obviously smashing his range, right? Against a 5-bet, we're going to need to construct a situation where, like, what is the bottom of our continuance range versus the 5-bet? It's probably going to be, like, jacks plus, sometimes tens plus, right? Like, tens plus, sometimes nines plus. Like, it really is going to be dependent on villain, but it'll be something like nines plus being the extreme bottom. And then like ace queen plus, like ace queen being the bottom. Like something has to be the bottom when you're getting 3-bet at that frequency. See what I mean? And it's like whatever, like online plays like this. Like it's like you're going to get four bet at a much higher frequency than you do live. And it's like, yeah, sometimes tens is the bottom. And it's like, yeah, you're going to run into it. But it's like, okay, just that's why you're forward tabling 25 and out, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah, I've got to go further with that because I mean, like I said, like I was telling you, like at the start of the hand, like my four betting at this point, unless I've had enough history with the villain to know that he's getting out of line, like it's so it's just strictly value, and I do need to open that up just a little bit more.
I mean, honestly, like you're probably printing money right now against their frequencies. You're probably printing money, but as you move up, like you just need to analyze those formations, like. Do you have? I mean, I probably shouldn't even been mentioning this, given this is going to go on Reddit. But if you go on Reddit once and just like look at Sauce's videos in terms of like what he does in these formations of like button versus big blind, I think it's really interesting because your queen nine of clubs call pre-flop is like a layup call. Like it's the easiest call in the world. You know what I mean? Like it's a slam dunk call. Like you should be defending like worse hands than that. You know what I mean? Like you probably should be defending like queen seven of clubs. Like it's like it's pretty absurd like how much you should be defending from the big blind given you're getting a price.
In that case, then I'm certainly not defending enough.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm not. I don't have like my hand history to know.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing.
I
like
probably
you
should be defending.
Yeah, I mean you're probably like way under defending the big blind. It's just like a natural problem of low stakes players. Like, someone's opening 3x, like you need to have a minimum defense frequency that doesn't allow him to just print money on your big blind. Now, it's not always a problem for you to like overfold your big blind if you're just gonna play like shit out of position, right? Because even if you're making a slightly plus EV call pre-flop and then you just butcher the hand, then I'd rather you just fold pre. So like as you get better post, then you need to increase your big blind defense, Man, your silence scares me.
I think I look at hands. I think I look at hands, like the queen seven suited or king five or king six suited, and I'm just like, like I said, I'm out of position, and I know this is a hand I'm probably not going to be comfortable with, even if I flop top pair, and I guess that's probably my line of thought on those hands and why I obviously don't defend them enough. Just because I feel like I'm getting too many tricky spots post flop that I'm probably not prepared enough for.
But a lot of those hands flop such static equity, right? It's like king five suited, when it flops a king, it's just a king. It's like most of the time it won't be that difficult. You know what I mean? Like if you're defending king eight, let's say king eight suited, right? You just defend and it just comes king high. Like, okay, like it's just like check call, like it's not hard.
Just exercising pot control and let him bluff off.
Yeah, like you just evaluate flop textures in terms of like how many bluffs he has versus like how many value hands he has versus like your hand, and most of the time like king X on like king XX for the most part in a general sense is going to be good for two streets, like at least a check call, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's still the power of king high. Like he's opening worse hands than king high,
So it's just even showdown value if he decides not to bet.
Yeah, I mean sometimes king high is just winning, right? He's opening queen jack and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
All right, so let's see.
All right. Okay. This guy is trying to think of a way to explain this guy. This guy is a very, very weird player that I got involved with in this hand. I'd already seen him flat ace queen suited from the small blind versus a button raise.
Okay.
And flops an ace on, it's like an ace XX low cards, not really connected that much. No flush draw on board, and he never bet it. He check called one bet post flop.
Okay.
So I really don't know what to think about this. So I mean, you'll see. Like he limps in. The guy who just slipped in is what I was talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's tight passive over 4.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, I saw him do some things where I was just like, what is he doing? You know, like, so, you know, I mean, obviously with this hand, I'm definitely completing here. I don't like raising out of position after I've seen this guy flat hand like ace queen suited.
Yeah.
You know, out of position.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
So I didn't think there was much merit to raising.
Yeah.
Pre-flop.
Okay.
All right, so I just complete. All right, so I mean, good flop for me. I feel like.
Yeah. Interesting.
Slightly overmatched. And I just.
Yeah, I think your hand's like way too good.
I want to be cautious versus this particular guy because it's just what I've seen him do earlier, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely can't.
Like,
you definitely can't fold. Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't trying to get cute against this guy, like knowing that I've seen him, you know, have hit pretty solid hands earlier and just play him completely off the wall weird. So,
yeah, I think check calls like pretty standard.
Crazy with him at this point.
Interesting.
Here, obviously, I mean that's
I think there's arguments. I think there's arguments for you to. I mean, I think we're supposed to just check in terms of like game theory because we don't have any bluffs on this turn. Like if we lead turn, like we don't, like we would never lead turn like with anything, you know. Now somebody that like limps so heavy and somebody that is over betting flops, I think exploitatively you could probably lead the turn. If he's somebody that's gonna like check back, you know, like king queen or something like that. But I think checking turn is like completely standard.
Yeah, and I did because I mean I was thinking throughout the hand. I was like, you know, this guy's a weird player, obviously. He overbets the flop, and I don't feel like this turn changes anything from his point of view.
Yeah.
So I was willing to you know hand it off to him again.
Yeah.
And so I did check. And
I'm curious what you're gonna do here.
Well, I decided to go ahead and go for a check raise, and to me it was just strictly for value.
Okay, why though?
I mean, I guess you know, because I mean, you know, I saw how passively he played ace queen earlier, so I mean, it's definitely not out of the realm possibility he has another hand like that here. I mean,
I think it's really tough. You know, I think it's like really tough for you to represent bluffs here. Like, there's not that many hands you would check raise this turn as a bluff with. So, and now you're like double blocking his value hands. So, you really need him to have like kings, you know? If he has something like kings, I think that, you know, he should barrel. You're going to expect a barrel on the river a lot. I think we need to probably protect some of our weaker holdings like 5x of spades that check call flop. I mean, maybe you check call flop with 5x of spades. Maybe like exactly 5-4 of spades or something like that you would check call flop with. Something that could pick up like a lot of equity moving forward. Queen X of spades. You probably would not check raise Queen X of spades on the turn. So because of that, this is another one of those situations where like I see like you not having many bluffs, right? Can that be okay against an opponent like this? Maybe. Like maybe it doesn't matter that you don't have any bluffs.
It's just too exploitable once I start moving up, especially.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where like you always have the nuts here. Like it's so hard for you to be bluffing that I mean, I would just check call and like evaluate rivers and like allow him to continue betting and maybe check raise the river. But yeah, I think that check raising is like probably fine in a low stakes game, man. Like I'm not knocking it. You know what I mean? Like you're playing 25 and
No,
L.
no,
Like,
I know. I see it exactly for what it is. No, I mean,
yeah, like if you
I
put your
agree. Like,
like put your shoe on his foot, right? Like you're not bluffing, dude. Like what bluffs you have? None, zero. So for that reason, I think check calling is like better in terms of game theory, but against an opponent that's like willing to make a lot of mistakes, I don't see it being bad. The only bad part is that you're double blocking like all the value, right? Like, what does he have? Like, he needs to have exactly like an overpair. So, all right, let's see what happens.
all right. So, again for the check raise here. Now, I made it. I mean, I guess it's not really that small because it's just like what 3.5x, a little less than 3.5x.
Yeah.
But like I'm wondering, like, if he's gonna call this, then is he gonna call a larger bet? Like, should I have went even a chunk larger here? Because I mean, if he's gonna call this, would he call a little bit more?
I think this is a situation where you have like such few. I think this is a situation where you have like such few bluffs that you should just be going small because you don't have like you're not bluffing ever. So, I think small's fine.
Okay. All right. Now the worst river card in history of man is after he calls.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, 2 different straights get there.
I would just block. Like I would just block.
Flush. I have better 2 pairs now. But like, okay, so I decided to just go ahead and check to him.
Yeah, I think that's.
But here, like,
good.
I know that the check allows him. I mean, I don't think he's too much of a bluffy player. Against other opponents, I think maybe checking there will allow them to potentially bluff me out of some pots. But at the same time, like even with that bad run out, I just feel like maybe my hand's like a bit too strong to play. It's not super strong, obviously, on this river, but I think it's like strong enough to not fold unless he just shoves.
I think if you check,
is that reasonable? You think, or
I think. I think I would just like block. Like I think I would just bet like 450 and then like fold to a shove, which is like disgusting. Because we're getting such a good price, but like
just doing that blocker bet to see maybe if he's afraid of that river too,
right?
To keep him from pushing us off our hand.
Yeah, and I still think like he calls with like he probably just calls with ace jack, so like you lose less. He probably is like pretty tempted to call with king queen, pretty tempted to call with ace kings that like didn't believe. He's tempted to call with like king queen. He's tempted to call with like king jack, maybe. Probably not though. And then it like saves you from having to make like a really tough decision if he shoves. It's a really tough spot. Because you don't have the queen of spades as well, like he will call the check raise, with like queen x of spades. But the good thing is that there should only be like king queen and queen 10 and maybe queen 9 of spades. So that's only 3 combos. So he shouldn't have like too many spade combos, to be completely honest with you. King 10 of spades. I mean, if we go through like all spade combos that bet flop for that size, it would probably be like king 10 of spades, queen 10 of spades, queen 9 of spades, king queen of spades. So that's 4. Yeah, I mean maybe 5, 6 of spades and stuff. So like he has like probably like less than 8 combos of spades. So it's relatively not that many. I mean, medium size amount of spades, but uh,
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
like I mean,
I'm just really thinking if I want to check fold or block. That's really what the only two things going in my head. I think check calling it off for all of it is really bad. Um, I think that it's either a block or a check fold, and I'm trying to see if like there's enough hands that he would call with worse if we block. So like, would he call with like king queen? Would he call with um? Does ace king possibly call the turn that doesn't believe? But it's like hard because the ace of spade rolled off. Um, I think it's like a pretty easy check fold if we choose to check, and there's arguments for blocking the river. But that's it.
yeah, because I mean, like he doesn't jam here, but he makes a pretty large bet.
Yeah.
Basically 2/3.
Yeah, I would fold to this. I would probably fold to this, to be honest. But it's like this is kind of the reason why I wanted to block because I think that he could potentially still have like ace jack. So now we lose to that. But if we block, he probably just calls with ace jack. Maybe even just calls with ace queen, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reason why I think blocking is good. I think if we choose the check route, like I think we should fold to this.
Yeah, and this definitely was not a snap call for me. Like I was kind of tortured on this river. Like I took a significant amount of time to try to figure it, and then I didn't think my hand was that strong in the grand scheme of things, especially after what I've seen from him earlier. But I felt like it was just like a little too strong to fold.
Yeah.
So I just kind of made a crying call.
Yeah, we probably lose here. Maybe you win. I don't know. Wow, Jesus Christ!
How did so you get an idea of this guy's weirdness, and I saw this from him, a couple different times throughout the session. How does he not shove over the top of my raise on the turn? I don't understand.
I mean, I don't think he should. I don't think he should. Because you don't rep like you rep so strong. That's why he doesn't shove because you're like repping zero bluffs. Okay, if we backtrack now, this is like
exactly queen jack.
This is why I think that your check raise on the turn is like really bad because you don't get the top of his range. Like the top of his range is so narrow, right? That you're getting another street against it, but you're not getting it to make like huge mistakes, right? Like, let's say for example we check call the river's a 6, right? You're getting it all because you're gonna check, he's gonna bet, you're gonna smash, right? And you're protecting your range, much more efficiently. Like now when you have king queen or queen 10, like you are protected. Now when you check call the turn on the turn jack, you're not always just like you don't always just have weak queen X. See what I'm saying? So I think that's like a really bad, like I think that's something of note. Now this guy's the stone worst poker player probably in the pool because this is a terrible river bet. I don't like. I would have lost this hand like because I would have check folded the river like if I would have check raised the turn. But I think you got really fortunate.
And I was there. I mean, I was strongly leaning towards the fold, and I was just totally.
But you see, if you block the river, he just calls. You see what I mean? Like, yeah, we make less money, but let's say he would have just shoved the river, you would have folded, right? Like if he just shoves the river instead of betting $9, you fold. Right? I think so. At least maybe. At least.
That would also save you from those times he does have ace jack, right?
Right. I mean, especially ace jack. Like I think he just always just calls. Like, ace queen maybe he shoves through. I'm not sure, but definitely ace jack just only calls. Yeah, I think you got like really lucky, man. Like, I think you got really lucky. He like definitely like made a really bad river play. Um, but yeah, I think you should, like I said, like I think you should retain Queen Jack as a call on the river, to protect like your other hands, man. Like, Queen 10, Queen 9, those hands that like really want to check call turn, they need some help, So Queen Jack's like the best you're gonna have there. So yeah, I mean, I think you played it like,
Makes sense.
yeah, I think you played it okay. I think it's really tempting like when you get to the turn to check raise for value, but I think what happens is that you just ruin the rest of your range. Like you just block too many good hands. Like you block his value, and then you like butcher the rest of your range, which kind of sucks.
Gotcha. All right, so that was the
That was all of them.
4 winning spots.
I mean, that's cool. I mean, I think you play really. I think you play like pretty well for like the player pool. Yeah, man. I like really encouraged you to, even if it's just for like a month. Obviously, like running once is really expensive and stuff, but I think there's like some like really good videos there that are that are specific to what you need. And obviously like Redship has some videos, but like I think that
Redship's really geared for live play.
yeah, for sure. And I think that in terms of like there's some videos there that are going to be very beneficial for you because it just teaches you like how to approach like just different formations, like button versus big blind formations, and like how you're going to think about that. Like some of the stuff we went through today, but obviously they play online for a living, so it's going to be like in your scope of thinking. But another thing too is like you're really gonna want to learn, I guess, like how to like distribute your hands in terms of like retaining. Like what you really need to think about is like how many bluffs you have versus not, right? So like when you don't have a lot of bluffs, you can't have big sizing, and you can't check raise that much for value. You know what I mean? When you have a lot of bluffs, right? When you have a lot of natural bluffs, you can pick big sizing, and you can also check raise more often for value, right? It's like if we take two extreme examples, right? Like King 5 Deuce Rainbow, right? If you had a set of fives, you would not check raise the flop, right? Because it makes no fucking sense, right? Like if you defended the big blind,
King. I mean, there was nothing for him to continue.
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, like not only does he not continue, but you also are not bluffing, right? And you're never gonna check raise King Jack there, right? So because of that, you're like retaining your strongest hands, right? But if we take a board that's like very dynamic, like 9-8-6, right, where you defend the big blind, now you're gonna have a more elaborate check raise frequency because you have a lot of bluffs. You have Jack 10, you have Queen 10, you have flush draws, you have some poor 7x's that maybe check raise. You see what I'm saying? So because you have more bluffs, you can now have more value, right? Like 9-8, like sets. You see what I'm saying? So you're always like your biggest struggle right now is like understanding textures where like you have a lot of bluffs and you don't have a lot of bluffs, and then looking for how to incorporate your big hands in those situations. See what I mean? I think that's really what like your missing link.
I just wrote down a question here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wrote down a question here that try to take me like when I go back and study and try to think about some of these hands I'm going through, and so I want to make sure that this is obviously a key question I should be asking myself. Like, so when you're explaining what you can and can't rep on certain textures.
Yeah.
The question I wrote down is, can we rep bluffs as well as the hand was played? Like, do you think that's a fair question that I should just start asking myself when I'm reviewing these hands?
Yeah, like every time you're check raising for value, like anytime you're making a value bet, right? You need to ask yourself, what bluffs do you have? Because they go hand in hand, right? Your bluffs are a necessary portion of the game. It's what actually gets you to get value, right? So because of that, every value bet you make, unless the guy's a complete idiot, right, should be protected by bluffs, right? It sounds stupid, right? But it's the reason why you're getting called, right? And so the more bluff combinations you have, right, the more natural bluffs you have, right, the bigger that bet could possibly be, right? And vice versa. The less bluffs you have, right, the smaller your bet needs to be, right? Either for value or for bluff. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's like kind of like I don't know if that's like advanced or not anymore. Like it's pretty common knowledge, I guess now. But I think it's something you need to think about. Like always think about like how many bluffs you have in your range, when you're making a value bet. Like that Queen Jack is like a definitely prime example of like you not understanding how many bluffs you have because you have 0, right? And you're up against like yeah. And it's like if you're up against somebody that's like showing to be like really weird, right? So you should just like always check call. And then like on that river specifically, like you could like check call sometimes, given that he could potentially have ace king or something, or like ace 10.
Yeah, because we're not putting ourselves in near as a difficult spot, I guess, when the pot's not bloated.
Right, and like he'll still have like bluffs. He'll still have to bluff 9-10. You see what I mean? Like he'll still have to bluff. He'll still have like ace X that he thinks is good on that river, like ace 3, ace 4. We'll still bet the river for value. He'll still have like rando ace 10s. So like we can still make that pretty easy decision. But moreover, like when the river's just like a 7, now all of a sudden we're just like check smashing for value. See what I mean? And in turn, protecting the rest of our weak range, which is really, really the reason why we're check calling the turn. So yeah, I mean, especially if you're gonna play online, like you need to be more protected. Like there was a couple times that you're just like not protected. So that's really what you need to work on. Cool.
All right, so
is there any other stuff that you like had questions about? I couldn't hear you.
Oh no, I was just saying. Sorry. Cool. So that was the top 4. Like I started going through. I mean, I don't know. You can see my screen right now, right?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, you can see it right now, right?
Yeah, I can see it.
Like it was just. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those sessions where, I mean, like, I've got this, set up for the entire session, and this was my largest pot that I lost. It was just one of those sessions where things just went fairly well. Like, I wasn't smashing a ton of hands, like monster hands, but I wasn't losing very many big pots.
Yeah, it's because you knew you were gonna. It's because you knew you were gonna talk to me. You knew you were.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you knew you were gonna talk to me.
So we're playing this morning. I was looking forward to it. I was like.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. No, that's good. Yeah, I mean, this hand doesn't really look that bad.
Do it now?
Go ahead.
Alright, so this was the biggest hand that I lost.
Okay.
It was an ugly run out, and I want to make sure it was okay as played. I thought the turn card you'll see in a second was really bad.
Yeah.
And wonder maybe I should go ahead and dumped it there, but anyway. Alright. Don't know too much about this guy. I only played 66 hands with him.
I think you could consider raising bigger pre-flop because of stack sizes. Like you could consider just making it like...
Because we're so...
Yeah. Like you could consider even making it 4x. or even at least 3.75x or whatever. Like stack sizes are deep enough where like you should consider raising bigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, see, that's something I really hadn't even given much thought to at all. Like, I just kind of I guess rolled wrong with.
Yeah, you're just like
the way I've been doing.
Yeah. Like, you're falling into like default thinking. But like if you look at stack sizes, like you would realize that he's sitting almost 200 big blinds deep. Cool. Okay, that's good. That's good.
So, just a disgusting turn card, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because if he's got ace 8, 8, 7, 8, 9, any 8x hand, obviously he's now crushing me. Flush gets there.
And he could like fairly easily bluff you here too, so I think it's pretty easy check back.
Yeah, I should have, looking back at it, because I was not a fan of that card, and
yeah, I think you just get bluffed here a lot. Like,
I went ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you should just check back the turn. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Because, like, if he has, like, ace 4, if he has 6-5 of spades, if he has, like, anything, like, semi-decent, he could just turn it into a bluff and put your range in the cage. Especially if you're, like, over-bluffing this turn. I mean, over-betting, like, frequency-wise on this turn. I think you'll have, like...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't like the bet on the turn. Like, I think you should just check. I think now, like, you're way too up. Go ahead.
Do you think we're okay with calling and just and seeing what happens on the river, or do you? I mean, because I guess my question is it possible that he's doing this with some small pocket pairs, just not giving me credit for connecting with this board,
no.
Button raise?
I don't think he has a pair. No. I don't think he has like a pair. I think he has like his bluffs will be like 6-5, 6-5, 4-5, ace 5, ace 4 kind of hands. Like it's kind of like weird
maybe
for
like one diamond or something.
Yeah. Like, if he has, like, 6-5 of spades, it's probably good for him to do this. If he has, like, even, like, 9-10 of spades, where, like, now he's blocking your likely 8x combinations, right? Like, that's another good candidate. If he has, like, ace 4 with the ace of diamonds, it's another good candidate. And he could have ace 4 off because you raised 3x and he's sitting 200 big blinds deep, right? So he could potentially still have ace 4 with the ace of diamonds. Ace 4, ace of diamonds, ace 5, ace of diamonds, 9-10. 9-10 is a good one for him to check raise this, like 9-10 of spades, because he blocks like your 8x combos. 6-5 will probably be like his worst bluffs. But those hands, I don't think pairs like turn their hands into bluffs as often. Like he has better candidates to do that with. Does that make sense?
More about him trying to get the showdown with if he has like a pair or something.
Yeah, like if he has like 7s with the 7 of diamonds, like he'll just check call. Because like you'll still have like a whole bunch of like 1 diamond combinations that are just barreling turns sometimes, because you open the button in a 4-handed game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that.
Write down a couple notes here.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think that you should. Like this really sucks, obviously, but once you choose to bet, I think you kind of have to call because you're pretty high up in your range, and like if you just fold this, like I think it's like a little bit exploitable.
I went ahead and called, and
I mean, it sucks because we're gonna lose. We're gonna lose this like so much. Like, oh well, all right, now we definitely lose.
Yeah,
Um,
that river card was disgusting. But he makes an interesting lead here, like because it's really really small. It's basically a plucker bet. I mean, I guess like
yeah.
unless he feels like he's betting for value with something. I mean,
I think his bet like
how do you interpret that bet?
I think it's really bad. I think his range is like pretty like. So what he's saying with this bet is that he doesn't have a lot of bluffs, which is like true, right? Like his bluffs now kind of completed on the river. Like now his only bluff would be 9-10 of spades and like 6-5. Because the combinations he would have with aces will be with the ace of diamonds, so that just made the nut. However, I think he should just bet. I think you'll have hands that. Yeah, I think this is like exactly like Jack 10 of diamonds. You know, I think if he was to have a house, he should just like bomb. So yeah, I agree. I think his range is like some like medium diamond that's like blocking. Which is obviously fine. I think you have no choice but to fold.
So you think it's got some medium diamonds that he's scared that I got like the ace or king of diamonds or something?
Yeah, I think he's just blocking, like, which is fine because there's not much you could do about it.
Yeah, and that was exactly the case. As I just went ahead and dumped it.
Yeah, I think if he has a house, he should just like if he has a house, he should just bomb. Like, so it depends like what like where he's at in his range. Yeah. I think blocking is fine with like maybe his entire range on the river. But it's like what bluff catchers do you have? Like, yeah, I think his block is fine. Like, I think it's fine because he's just like gonna have no bluffs on the river. But exploitatively, like I would just bomb if I had threes full, because you're gonna have a diamond sometimes that's just not gonna believe. Make sense?
Okay. This next hand, I'm kind of kicking myself for playing it the way that and you might completely go the other direction than what I'm thinking, but with this particular hand, like, all right, let's see in a second here. I mean, this guy's 29-22.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty easy.
And I defend.
Yeah, standard is good.
Get shot there.
Yep.
We're five-handed, so he's in the cutoffs. He should have a pretty wide range here.
Yeah.
And with him being as lucid as he is, like I just with this board being as connected as it is, like I wasn't a fan of just check calling here because that's just there's too many ugly turn cards that can come.
Why? But okay, wait. The board is not that connected. The board is 9-6 deuce with two clubs. Also, in a general sense, the cards that come on the turn, you have them in your range. You know what I'm saying? So like, if the turn's a 7, right? Yeah, if the turn's a 7, you have 6-7 in your range. You have 9-7 in your range, right? You should have 8-10 in your range, right? 8-10 of diamonds for sure should be at least check calling the flop, if not check raising the flop at some frequency. So I think that this is another board where if you choose to check raise, you don't rep anything. Like, what do you have? You know what I mean? Like, you don't have any big hands. So let me just give you a scenario. You check raise to 3, and he makes it 750. Then what?
Well, it's funny that you should say that because
God, you see, this is the problem. Exactly. Yeah, I think your check raise is like really bad. Because you don't rep anything and it's easily exploited. He just has to put the 3-bet in. Now, do people at these? Now, I agree with you. Do people at these stakes put the 3-bet in? No, never. But that doesn't mean that it makes your play good. I think that you're afraid. You're like evaluating the boards based on your hand, right? So on 9-6 deuce 2 clubs, when you have ace 9 of spades, you understand that your hand is pretty good. However, moving forward is going to get relatively murky because there's cards that you neither want to see a big card or a little card, right? You just kind of want it to run out deuce deuce, right? However, what you need to know is that he's barreling probably this flop with a lot of his range. Secondly, when those cards that come that you perceivably are afraid of, like the 9s and the 7s, and I mean not the 9, the 7s and the 8s and the 5s and the jacks and whatever, like you have those hands. Like you have 9-7, you have 6-7, you have 9-8, you have, all those good hands. Like your range will contain those hands once you check call. So he necessarily has to account for you having those hands too. So he can't really get out of line. You see what I'm saying? He can't just like start barreling blindly.
Is it a situation where with him raising from the cutoff and his stats being, the way that they are, where we essentially have pretty much the same range here? I mean, but in a way, maybe his is slightly stronger just because his isn't as capped as mine would be.
For sure, yeah. Like you both, yeah. But you'll have like he might pass on opening. Like this is why you need to defend your big blind more aggressively, right? Because he might pass on opening 5-8 of 5-8 suited. He might pass it, but you'll never pass on defending it. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like a situation where like the more you defend, the more hands you'll have in your range. Like your hands become somewhat merged together. Like your equities will become like closer because he's opening the cut. And he's still relatively uncapped, which is like why you can't attack here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was what, like, when he 3-bet me on the flop, like, I was really frustrated at myself because I was sitting there thinking that I allowed him to play perfectly against me because now he's doing this with his overpairs, he's doing this with his sets, he's doing this with his straight draws, his flush draws, like,
yeah.
He could have so many hands here that, I had equity against that I just gave away by check raising.
Yeah, I mean, he could be bluffing you.
Because I can't call
like,
it here.
Yeah, he could just have like 7-8, and like you're just folding the best hand, like, and he's just like pressing his equity against what you're doing, which is like nonsense. Yeah, I'm kind of glad he did this to you because it kind of like shows that this could be done. You know what I mean? Like, which is like kind of what I tell people that like this is an easy exploit, and people just think that it never happens. Now you see that like it kind of does happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
if I was him, I would make this exact same play with, my combo draws and some overpairs and
yeah. It's good. I mean, you could even do it with like ace king of diamonds. Like, you're just like, what? Like, I could have it. You know what I mean? As well as like, it just puts your range in the cage. That's really what it comes down to. Like, what do you have? Like, you're probably like what? Like, you have to have a set or like 9-6. Like not, but there's only like 2 combos of 9-6, right? Which is like 9-6 hearts and 9-6 of spades. However, given your propensity to not defend the big blind, you might not even have that. Like you might not have that either. So it's like if he knows you don't defend the big and you're check raising this board, now you're repping exactly sets, which is now only 9 of them. So he's just gonna like press his equity versus your range, which is fairly easy when he 3-bets. I think that you should just check call flop.
After this hand, like I do it now.
Yeah.
Like after this hand, I ran it. I ran a 22% open for him in Flopzilla, and I mean my range is got him. Well, not my range, but my hand has his opening range crushed here, and obviously, like I said, that check raise just lets him right off the hook.
Yeah. I think it's a huge. I think this is kind of where poker is going, where like it's just going to be like people check raise flops with draws, and then like if they don't account for like their value, right? Like they're just gonna get 3-bet. Like people are becoming too good at understanding runouts now that people are becoming less and less inclined to bluff catch and more inclined to just fold out their opponent's equity share. So because of that, you're just gonna see more 3-bets going in on the flop like this, where like now, given you don't rep enough hands, like enough value, he's just gonna blow you off your equity. And it's like, what can you do? Like you could only get it in now with like 6x of clubs or sets. And it's like, sure. Like, but then everything else just folds, which is kind of annoying. You know?
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, I know I can't continue in that spot. He just checkmates me there.
Yeah, he raped you there. That sucks. But I think that you should just like understand that like when the 7 peels, like whatever, like you're just gonna check call again, and you're just gonna let the rest of your range protect you. Like the rest of your range will allow you to like not be exploited because you're just defending like 9-7. You know what I mean? And now the 7 rolls off, so you're gonna have that sometimes. Make sense?
Alright, so this next last hand is actually a hand that I won.
Alright.
But I really believe that I missed out on some value here.
Cool.
Villain in this hand, this ping tennis guy over here.
Yeah.
I've got notes on his account in ACR. Like I've seen him shove pre-flop, like 4-bet shove, king queen, king jack, things like that. So I'm not really giving him like I mean I feel like he's gonna overvalue hands.
Yeah. Okay.
So like I mean we'll see like I raise and
oh, this is great.
I went ahead and c-bet here.
This is where I make all. Oh man, this is where I make all my money.
So when he does this, do it now.
What?
Like when he does this, I mean, there's a lot of combo draws that I feel like have a lot of equity.
Yeah.
So.
You should.
But, I mean, at the same time, like he's also going to show up weaker king here occasionally, and maybe even some 9x.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a fan of ripping it here just because, like I said, I just felt like there were a lot of combo draws he could show up with that would have a good bit of equity against my hand.
Oh, it hurts.
So I looked at flat.
No. Okay, stop.
That, or you think
Okay, let's stop everything. All right, so you open King X, he calls, right? Now, under the gun 1, like I don't know how tricky he is, like if he could have aces, ace king, and like stuff like that. But whatever. Like we flop the top of our range. Now, on a board like this is a relatively this is a board where like we have range advantage still because we have the top, like we have more big hands than he does. However, runouts will favor him, right? So some elite players will classify this as like range advantage for you. I tend to classify this as like range neutral, given that we flop range advantage. However, runouts will favor our opponent, and our opponent is in position. So I think those two things means that this is kind of a neutral board. Now, when I would choose to like check raise here some percentage of the time with this hand, like because I think he's gonna like overstab and stuff like that, and I think that this is kind of a board where you're gonna be checking queens and jacks and stuff like that, like at a very high frequency. Because of that, I think we should retain some hands to check raise. Now, once you chose to bet and he raises, right? I think you need to understand that he has just a plethora of draws, right? And you should just be like pressing your equity against his equity. And when you when you bet call, you kind of allow him to control that in a way. That can be fine if your plan is to like check rip on certain turns, right? So if like the turn,
that's exactly what it was. My plan that was exactly my plan here was like any safe turn, I was gonna just check shove.
Right now, but what happens is that like sometimes he just checks it back, right? So it's like he gets to like actualize his entire equity.
Yeah, there's the turn, and you see, like, I check going for the check raise, and then he does check behind.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's why you can't do this. Because, like, people are just, like, too good now. Like, he's just going to raise, and then when you don't fold, he's going to correctly classify what kind of hand you have, which is going to be, like, king jack plus. Right? And, like, he understands that, like, you're just, like, not folding that hand. So he's just going to, like, actualize his equity and bluff when the board runs out extremely poor for you. You see what I'm saying? So, like, if this river is like an 8, right? Now he's going to bluff, right? If he has, like, whatever. Like, he's just going to bluff when the river's an 8. But, like, if the river's a deuce, he probably won't bluff. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, because of that...
Like,
yeah, go ahead.
When you see this, like, river come out, and it's a blank,
yeah.
Like, even here, I feel like I even missed value from, some weaker kings and some 9Xs that he may have. Because like
I think you could block.
Like, well,
yeah, I think you could just bet. I think you could bet small. Like I think you could bet like $5, or
yeah.
like, and then like he'll call with like whatever. He just doesn't have value here. Like
you could have king, jack.
There's, I mean, it could. There's two schools of thoughts. Like you could bet like relatively big because you'll have some draws that miss, like you'll have bricked hearts, right? So you can do that.
Yeah.
Or you could like bet small as a block, or you can just check and try to allow him to bet. I think all options are like relatively okay here. However, I think that he will, like when you bet, if it's a big bet, like I don't think he'll call that often. Because like king X's are like rare, because you have a king, there's a king on the board. It needs to be a king that he flats from under the gun 1 and raises the flop with it. So that's like kind of rare kings, right? And he doesn't bet the turn with it. Like it's kind of rare that he has that, right? So
even if he has like king 10 there, he should be betting the turn when I check to him.
Right, and like he'll just be tempted to bet the river for value, like if you check. If he does have a king. So it's not like you're losing value on a king every single time you check the river if he has a king as well. So I think that there's not necessarily like too much value in like trying to get value from a king. In terms of like going for big sizing.
So it really just comes down to that flop decision.
Yeah. I think that you should like consider checking the river or blocking the river. I think betting big is probably not that good with this exact hand exploitatively. I think it's exploitative though to like do that. I'm curious what he's gonna show up with here. When he checks back, like he should have a pair, I guess.
Yeah, the crappy thing about ACR is you don't get to see their hand.
Oh, if he's in position? That's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think like more importantly, like of more importantly than the river decision is your flop decision, which I think is like very cognizant of like what many like players do today that I think is bad. Like I think that you need to begin to classify hands. Classify boards in terms of like who has range advantage, right? And how
Yeah.
boards will move forward. And so I think this is definitely a board where you could consider check raising. Um, Once you do choose to bet, right? Which I think is fine. Like betting is obviously okay. Um, and he chooses to raise, like you need to understand that your hand just like trumps his range. Like yes, he'll have big combo draws, right? Like Jack 10 and stuff like that of hearts. But like whatever, you're getting it in as a small dog against that. But in terms of his range, he has like a plethora of other draws that you just want to get it in, like and just run equity. Like you'll run very small amount of equity, right? But you'll just be able to print money. Whereas like here, you got the best run out, and he didn't put another. You got the best run out pretty much for your hand, and you weren't able to capitalize on another cent, which is a problem, right?
Right.
So I think that when you just call, you're gonna lose the pot an unfair amount of the time. He's gonna be able to actualize his equity or be able to bluff you at a frequency that you can't defend, right? So if like the river's a 5 here and he bets, you lose, right? Like you can't call, right? So because of that, I think that just like bet 3 betting the flop is better or check raising the flop is better.
Gotcha.
Make sense though?
Yeah, no, it does, because that's the notes that I wrote before we got on here was, I mentioned to you that I've seen him shove some King X hands pre-flop before, and my question was, did I miss value? And right after I put, should I shove the flop? Like, that was the questions I wrote down before.
I don't think you necessarily missed value. I think you let him have an unfair portion of the pot. Does that make sense? Like he was able to actualize his entire equity, which is like in the long run giving him an.
I gave him what he wanted by calling his range and then just checking it down.
Right. Yeah, like he has an unfair portion of the pot now that belongs to him when you could just like 3-bet the flop and shut him out completely. You see what I'm saying? And that's kind of the problem with like the thinking of opponents or like just like player pools is that they're always concerned with like value or bluff, and they kind of forget that shutting down an opponent's equity share is valuable too. So it's like if you 3-bet this flop and he folds, right? Some people think that's bad, right? Because he's like you let him off the hook, quote unquote. However, you forget that he has a lot of equity and you just got him to fold it, right? So if you 3-bet this flop and he folds Jack 10, that's not necessarily a bad result. Jack 10 had a double gutty, right? So that's not bad, especially when you're going broke on a turn queen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's something to think about.
Yeah, that was it was just when he raises me there, I'm just like, I figure he's got a draw. I figure he's got a strong draw, and
But you're like afraid. Why are you afraid to get it in? Like, why are you afraid? Because he has a high equity?
I shouldn't be.
Yeah, like he has high equity. Whatever. Like, yeah, okay. Like you get it in when he has a big draw. You get it in 60-40, like dog. But like every other time, like you're smashing him. Like you're smashing his range as a whole, especially with the notes you have.
Yeah, I completely understand. Like that was just like the ace 9 hand. Like this was another hand that I was kicking myself at the end of it for how I played it.
Yeah. I think you should consider like check raising that board too sometimes. Not all the time, but like sometimes.
All right, here's the last. It's not that hand. Well, here's the last hand. I ran a bluff here, and it might be a pretty crappy bluff, but my main question about this hand,
Yeah.
well, I mean, like my main question about this hand is really my sizing on the river. Like once I make the decision to run a bluff here, like I mean you'll see when we get to the river. Like I find myself doing this like a lot, and I'm wondering if it's like bleeding money. But you'll see. I mean,
Okay.
so I mean I'm pretty deep here, which I guess it doesn't come into play too much except for this one guy over here who's also really deep.
Okay.
So I mean I like to go ahead and fire under the gun here.
Yeah.
It's not something I do all the time.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. Like I think it's a little loose, but it's like okay.
Yeah.
Especially given like whatever, it's fine.
I get flatted by a short stack.
Yeah.
Which is why I
annoying.
don't know that my bluff here was a good idea. I mean, I flop a good shot.
I think you could like bet like pretty small here. I think you could bet smaller than this. Because of just how like static the board is and like your hand type and the fact that your opponent's like really really short. I think you could get this away for like not that I think the EVs are much different to be honest, but I think that like 130 this flop is pretty good. I think it just works at like an equal frequency.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, this board doesn't really connect with a whole lot, and since I raised under the gun, I thought maybe I could just go ahead and take it down.
Yeah. I think it's fine for you to bet 150. I just think that you could get away with it betting like 90 or like 85 cents.
So the deep stack guy ends up folding, and that was me in the short stack.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean that card to me obviously changes absolutely nothing. I think that just trying to assign a range to him. I mean, obviously there's flush draws out there. There's some queen X hands. Maybe some mid pocket pairs.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that's pretty much it. So I don't think this card really changes anything, and I do decide to fire again here, but because he's such a short stack, like I decided to go really small. Because normally my sizing, my typical sizing is larger than this.
Yeah.
But it's pretty clear at this point. I think I'm trying to see if he'll fold.
Yeah.
I feel like if he's got a queen X hand, doesn't he just go ahead and put it in?
Sometimes, yeah.
I mean, if he's going to be concerned about maybe me betting a flush here, or
I think that if he has a queen, he should just call. But I think that this is another one of those situations where like you've landed yourself on the river with like half pot, and you've I don't know, man. I mean, it's the bottom of your range, so you could definitely blast, but we're laying him such a sick price, man. Like, I guess we get him to fold hands like nines. We get him to fold hands like eights. Oh, is that mine? Oh, that's yours. Okay.
We get him to fold those mid pocket pairs and even some flush draws that he has me beat with that he doesn't realize it.
Yeah. But I think flush draw is probably just smash flop, right? Like you just bet and he's just gonna go all in, like whatever.
So you think he's weighted here more than towards mid pocket pairs?
I think queen X. Like I don't see any reason queen X should shove. Like it's just gonna call. Like if he has ace queen, why would he ever raise?
All right. So here's my question. Like, okay, so you'll see. I mean, obviously I'm doing that to put him all in, just put pressure on him. I mean, he's either gonna call.
Yeah.
But here's my issue. Like, it's not necessarily his stack size. Let's say that I was doing this versus maybe Hupuna Matata up here.
Right.
Who has a 100 blind stack.
Yeah.
Like, when I make the decision to bluff on a hand like this, I find myself a lot making pretty large. I mean, I guess this isn't really that large of a bet in the grand scheme of things, but I don't know that it looks so much like a value bet. Like I find myself a lot of times making bigger bets on the river when I'm trying to bluff, almost like I'm trying to buy the bluff, rather than trying to sell it.
I think that this is like one of those boards where like you still have good like. So like if we were facing like a bigger stack, like overbetting the turn is definitely an option because you just have so much better hands, and the top of his range is a queen, right? So I think that like if you overbet the turn, like it puts like a ton of pressure on him. If you don't want to do that, there's still options like you can still overbet the river, and it puts him in a lot of tough spots. I think overbetting the turn is definitely good against like a big stack because like you can still have aces, you can still have kings, and it puts like the middle of his range like in a really really tough spot. Whereas like tens is like a really easy call on the turn until you overbet. So I think you could do that with like this hand combination sometimes too. You could also I think there's arguments for like not betting this combo on the flop, like and just betting like the spade combos on the flop, like 5-4 spades instead. However, I think that like you're gonna print money here like fairly often, like on this board texture. So I think betting it is fine. So your question is like what you would do against a bigger stack. I think like you could consider overbetting turn, because like your range is just like smashing his range, and if he calls that, I would just shut it down.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that's something I definitely haven't considered before. Because, like, I mean, I find myself in these situations where I decide to bluff when I don't have any equity.
Yeah.
And, which means obviously we need to do some percentage of the time. But the thing is, like, I feel like I'm betting too large sometimes on these rivers. Like, I'm not overbetting, obviously, but I'm betting like this, for example. And, yeah, I'm getting some folds occasionally, but I feel like I'm also maybe burning money the times I get snapped off by Queen X here.
Just, like, understand how many bluffs you have. Like, if you don't have a lot of bluffs, like, you don't need to bet a lot. Right? So like your only like true bluffs on this runout is like 5-4 that you have like 5-4 that you have so rarely, and then clubs. That's it. Those are your only true bluffs, right? But like 5-4 shouldn't even count because that's like not even like a real hand that you open all the time.
Right? Yeah, they're not gonna give me credit for that.
Right. So it's like okay, you have clubs. Like how many? Like 7-8, like 7-8, 9-8, 10-9, Jack 10. It's literally like 7, right? Or like 8, whatever. Like I don't want to go through the whole thing, but like you have like 8 bluffs. Yeah, so you have like eight combos of bluffs. That's it, and then you have like a ton of value, right? Like aces, kings, right? That's already 12. You have top set. Right, so that's 3, 15, ace, queen, all combos of that, right? So that's another 12. So that's like a ton of fucking like value already, not even counting king, queen, or queen, jack. So you don't have that many bluffs, so you should just bet small, like theoretically. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. All right. I just had like one like question, I guess, before kind of wrapping up.
Cool.
Like I watched your live at the bike video, with your just putting pressure on everybody and like
fuck them.
Yeah, and that's when I decided to tweet, and that's kind of I guess how we got here. Obviously, I mean, because I decided to tweet at you asking you about applying that online and like your explanation makes perfect sense to me as far as like I said. There's just people like too many people are multi-tabling, they're not really paying attention, and a lot of times the stacks just aren't deep enough to employ that type of strategy.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is like. What's some things I should look for to pick spots in to increase aggression? Like if I can't really employ that strategy online right now because of the state of online, it's just not feasible. Like what are some other ways I can look to increase aggression?
I think you should look to like lead more boards where you flop range advantage. I think you should look to three bet your big blind versus like button opens with kind of a balanced range of having hands like 8-7 suited and like 7-6 suited and stuff like that in your three bet range versus a button open. I think you could begin to three bet hands like sixes from the small blind versus a button open. And I think that those are the beginning stages of building like a really tough like aggression. Like all those things increase your aggression frequency. So like three betting your big blind um will probably be a good start, and like you'll just choose hands that have playability post. Um so choose hands like 8-7 suited and stuff like that. Three betting the small blind with hands like sixes would probably be pretty good. Um Defending your big blind more often um in terms of like just defending your equity share, right? If he opens to 3x and you have 1x in there, you have to defend at a certain frequency. So because of that, you're going to have to defend that. Now, you're going to have to develop some sort of a, like, if he's opening, like, late position, right, and you're defending, like, there's going to be boards where, like, you could consider leading. Now, in terms of game theory, that might not always be correct, but, like, people just don't defend well against that. So that's an option too. I think like the king queen hand. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I think the king queen hand's like a really good example of like where you could begin to check raise hands that might not necessarily be in your check raise range. It's weird because like you check raised ace 9, but you didn't check raise king queen on, you know what I mean? And like you had the same reasons. Like on ace 9, you're like, oh, I'm afraid of like what's gonna come. But on king queen, why were you not afraid of what was gonna come? Like it's weird that you chose to check raise ace 9 but not king queen. So I think that's something you should think about.
That's probably one of my biggest leaks, like in my just in my estimation from what I do. Like I find that I'm often like very inconsistent with the way that I play sometimes. Like, and I mean that those two hands are an example. Like I think that happens like way too much for me. Where I'm in similar spots and I make different decisions when I shouldn't be. I need more consistency, I guess, in my decision making.
Yeah, and I think that what's gonna happen is like if you just start like by classifying boards like on who has range advantage, you'll be able to understand which lines you should be taking, and I think that will get you a more consistent thought process. So that's probably something you should work on, like who has range advantage. Like that should always be like one of the biggest questions in the hand. Like on at least on the flop for sure, because it'll allow you to like understand how you should proceed.
So analyzing range advantage, and then I think the other key point that we were talking about was making sure that I'm balanced and that I can also represent bluffs on those times where I'm making certain decisions to play a hand a certain way.
Yeah, especially if you have value. Like if you have value, you definitely want to take into account how many bluffs you have, because that'll tell you if you should put in a check raise. That'll tell you if you should lead or like things like that. Like always ask like what you want to do with your bluffs, and how many of them do you have. That will give you the answer to your questions.
Yeah, because like I said, having won that tournament, like I'm comfortably bankrolled, even for 50 and L, or even really for 100 and L. But I feel like I really want to, to sew up some of these leaks at 25 and L before I start moving up.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I think that you're definitely a winning player at 25 and L. So that's fine. Like, in terms of moving up, like, just test the water. Like you could definitely test the waters. Like if you go up and you're still winning, at least at an equal or like equal hourly or whatever. I think it's like beneficial for you to move up, even if you're still patching up the leaks, because if you're a winning player, you're just like I presume that like you're trying to move up the ranks. Like it's not gonna be like 50 NLs like your like stop point, right? So
No, absolutely
the
not.
quicker the
A couple
quicker
months
you
back, Splitsuit asked me that. Like he's like, what's your? Cause I was talking to him on Twitter, and he's like, well, what's your goal with poker? And I was like, I mean, really, my goal is to be a winning mid-stakes player. 1, 2, 2, 4. I mean, that's where I would like to be.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think you should definitely test the waters in terms of like see how your opponents are playing at that in that player pool, and continue to patch
just see if I can compete with them, or if they're just running me over, and I'm just so lost in certain spots.
Yeah, because you can still move down. It's not like you go up and you're stuck there. Like if you go up and you see, okay, these guys are like way better than me, then you can still move down and continue to patch up your leaks. However, if you move up and you see that like they're still bad, like why not just play there while you continue to patch your leaks, because you're just making more money, right?
Yeah, because even at 50 NL, I mean, I still got over 100 buy-ins for that, so it's not like it's putting a strain on my bankroll if I drop it to you.
Yeah, and if you're just like losing, if you're just a losing player at that level, then you just move back down. It's not like there's no harm done. Like if you lose 2-3 buy-ins, like all right, whatever, like I'm out. Which is like not maybe you might need to lose more than that, but like you know what I mean. Like if you get the sense that you're just not winning here, like you're just an underdog in the field, then you could always move down. So it's fine.
Yeah, and I think I can tell a difference between variance or making a couple bad decisions on my part versus my opponents just essentially having their way with me. And
yeah,
I think there's a relatively clear difference between the two if you're really observing how the hands are coming out.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you play poorly. Like, I think you play well. I just think that a couple of the things that you need to work on is like, consistency with the logic, with the thought process. But I think that'll come from like understanding range advantage, and then, things that I didn't see. I think you should just off things you told me, like the queen nine of clubs, like you were like hesitant to defend. I think that's like a slam dunk defense. So like that means that you're probably overfolding the big blind. So that's probably another issue. But besides that, I think you're okay. Like I don't see anything too bad in your game. I think you're definitely a winner in this player pool.
I mean, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to go over this with me. It means a huge deal to me because I've been kind of obviously just wandering around on my own trying to figure out, how to think and trying to read through forums and look at videos and just trying to figure it out my own way through that sorts of information. And this is really for me, like this is the way that I learn best is discussing, these sorts of spots and these sorts of hands with people who are much more successful and much more experienced than me in these situations. So.
Yeah, I mean I'm obviously not like I'm obviously like no longer like an online player or anything, but I watch so many of like Sauce's videos and like I watch and like I play like poker, So I've seen a lot of these spots a lot of the time. So like I'm obviously not gonna tell you like, hey, like I am a fucking 500 Zoom crusher or anything like that because I don't play that, but I'm like pretty sure I could beat this, so I think like I could still help you. So yeah, I mean, I think you're fine. Like I appreciate you saying that. But I think that you should definitely consider watching some of Sauce's videos. I think it'll help you a lot. Especially some other kid called like Nick Howard, who's also like really like an authority now, I guess, in this online six max. So those are definitely two players you should consider watching. And I think you'll hear them say like some of the stuff I told you. But yeah, man, I mean you're fine. Like just keep trucking. Like that's all. Like obviously like this was very informal, so like I kind of just took it like a little bit relaxed or whatever. But yeah, I think you're fine. Like honestly.
No, like I said, I mean, it's absolutely a huge help to me because, I mean, I kind of feel like a lot of times, looking at books and looking at videos, I'm often running around in circles, so to speak. Like, being able to discuss my thoughts with someone and have that direct feedback is I mean, that's a lot. I learn a lot more from that than I do.
For sure. I mean, that's just Yeah. It's definitely natural for you to learn better that way. It's easier. You have like specific questions that get answered.
Exactly.
But all right, man.
I'll let you go. Taking this time out of your evening to work through this with me.
No, I appreciate it. I'll try to maybe post this in that thread, but it's like kind of long, so maybe not. I don't know. I'll see. But yeah, maybe I'll post it in the thread so like everybody could see like kind of like what you worked on or whatever. Which I think makes your thread a little bit more interesting. But yeah, just
there's some watchers, there's some lurkers on the thread, but like not a lot of people are participating, which I would like to see more of. So maybe that would generate a little more discussion.
Great. All right, man. Sounds good. So I'll post it. All right, we'll chat later. Just hit me up if you have any questions.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Peace.